coming from the great American Southwest, from the very low desert. Good morning, good evening, whatever the case may be to all my listeners around the world, everywhere from the Americas all the way to the ice wall. Yes, I'm a flat earther, and all the way across past the giant mountain of God, as they say at the North Pole. But with that being said, always blessed to be here by the Lord Jesus Christ himself, along with my co-host Dominic. And tonight, or this evening, or this morning, wherever you guys are at listening to this, we have our guest, our once-a-month guest, Gary Wayne. Yours truly, your guys' favorite guest we have on. And this episode, we're going to be talking about the Ring of Solomon. So this is called the Gary Wayne Transmission. I'm still looking for a theme song. Still trying to, work on that so we could make it more special, kind of like a nighttime kind of show. One of those things. But any ideas out there, let me know if you guys could point me out to one of those creators that make theme songs, non-copyright ones from scratch. So that'd be cool, and make a cool little logo. But the name is going to be the Gary Wayne Transmission. So moving forward, going to be a very exciting topic. If you don't know what the Ring of Solomon is, I believe it's mostly in the apocryphal text is talking about a ring that he had that supposedly controlled non-human spiritual entities and demons and apparently, some hybrids. But we're going to dig into that. We're going to see how much truth there is to that. And we're also going to compare it to the Lord of the Rings. We're going to see the big similarities. And this is, the Lord of the Rings, stole so much pre-flood type of history and made it into a big trilogy or however many books and movies they are. But you know what I mean? So we're going to get into that. We're going to be discussing that. It's going to be very exciting. It's always fun, to get into these kind of topics. So like I always say, if you need to, hit the head, grab yourself a coffee, turn the lights down, and let's get ready for another exciting episode here on the Sabbath at Midnight. Oh, but wait, don't forget, if you have your own story and you have your own testimony and you want to come on the show and tell us what you saw, what you experienced, it could be UFO abduction, it could be demonic attack, maybe you met an angel, you had an encounter with Jesus. We want to hear it, okay? There is no wrong story, only good ones that help people come out of their fear. Because some people have been through things that you guys have been through and they're scared to speak up because people are going to make fun of them or they don't believe them. But you guys do a lot of help when you speak up on things like this, especially ones like people in SRA. Like, I can't tell you how many people came out of the woodworks and said, that happened to me too. I just didn't want to talk about it. So we're doing God's work. So let's move forward. Welcome back, everybody, to the Sabbath at Midnight. I'm your host, Lionel Tavares. Once again, we are here for the Gary Wayne Transmission. That is the name of the new show, once a month, every Sunday. And those of you who have been listening to us since the beginning of 2026, you guys already have an idea what that is, which is basically Gary coming on once a month as a regular guest. And we just talk about topics that are not really out there with the things that he discussed. We know people that have been following him for many years, his books, Genesis 6, 1 and 2. And I believe he has a novel book coming out. He'll discuss that more in a little bit. But today, so far this year, we've discussed everything from Islam to Satan's Little Season to the dry bones, AI technology. So this episode, we're going to get into some more different topics that are really not talked about. We're going to be talking about the Ring of Solomon. And those of you who don't know who that is, I expect some of you guys know who that is if you guys read the Bible. But Solomon is apparently, or as known as the wisest man to ever live on this earth. He has a lot of references to the movie Lord of the Rings. If you guys watched that before, a lot of crazy stuff in this. It's almost like a science fiction, medieval kind of movie, the way this story goes down. But we have Gary Wayne here to break it down with all the details and all the facts and all the good, little areas of the Bible and other books that we have not looked into ourselves and connected the dots. So before we do that, as always, Gary, please introduce yourself and let the people know about your new book too, the novel.
Yeah, so thank you for inviting me back. And yes, I'll start with the novel, The Primal Conspiracy. It's the little orange book you see in the background there. And the subtitle is called AI's Covenant with Babylon. And this is a project that I worked with my publisher, and we're working on the sequel to it right now. But it's an interesting sort of concept where we're trying to take my research both from prehistory and apply it into a novel scenario that will explain how we get to the last 7 years, and then go through the last 7 years if we're successful with people validating that it's worthwhile reading by purchasing to a certain level. I mean, we don't need a lot, but you do need some validation. So if you like secret societies and they're intrigued by that, if you like how bloodlines rule this world, and if you like how they keep track of their genealogies, and if you like how the conspiracy has been sort of set up out there for us to not understand, with the invisible ones who created the visible ones ruling this earth and how they want to bring about the end time, then you're going to really like this book, because this brings all of that into the characters and the locations, and everything from the names to the locations are Google worthy. So we want people to dig into them. So even if you're in with, like a name like Darian Mirza, I'm going to tell you, you have no idea how much depth there is to those two names that we're using for our Antichrist figure. But it goes right back to Proto-Indo-Aryan on the Mirza part. And of course, Darian might be a little bit easier in terms of its relationship to Darius. And of course, we're going to associate bloodlines that's going to work with all of these characters. And like with Elias of Vilak, we have him set up to be introduced as a false prophet as he goes through, and he's the head of the technology that merges with Babylon, because the mystical religion is a knowledge religion, so it's going to have its own Babylon system. But Elias is the Greek word for Elijah, and Vilak is a Slavic word for a big man or a giant, pale-skinned and red-haired, and a few other things that will go along with it as you dig deeper into it. So, and we're going to give, those are the bloodlines that we're talking about, just sort of the first sets of bloodlines, because there's a scioning or ennobling that will happen into, particularly when we're talking about Antichrist, and particularly with the false prophet, that we need to give them a set of bloodlines that have intermarried to produce the pedigrees for these individuals, so it fits biblical prophecy. And then we use my end time prophecy. So we show how we get to the last 7 years, and in book one we get to the third seal, and we've timed it so that, and you can go either way on this, but it just seems to fit a little bit better to have the first three riders come out before the start. But it happens probably a little bit quicker than what we're playing it out, but we've got some fiction room on that. And so as we get into book two, and with the start of the fourth seal, we're starting to deal with the start of the last 7 years, Daniel 9:27, the two witnesses, the 144,000 all sort of coming out, this war of destruction to bring about the seventh empire, and the rising. We've got the rising of Babylon, but we get it to full power at the part of the, as we get into book two. So we're trying to look at how AI influences the end time, then how we get to the end time from where we are today. So if you like that sort of novel that's got a lot of detail about eschatology and a whole bunch of things about prehistory and things that you may want to learn more about through the Old Testament, then this is going to be a book for you, because it's full of intrigue.
Yes, it does sound interesting. I also want to, I mean, I'm not going to have you answer right here, but I'm pretty sure there's a point where aliens come in and all kinds of creatures. That's going to be the exciting part.
Yes.
Unfortunately, those are the exciting parts of these stories. I love all that stuff. And I can't imagine the imagination that you have, because I know you know a lot about these creatures, and I just know that it's gonna come out and pop. So yeah, everybody who's into that stuff, definitely look forward to that. If you haven't heard Gary Wayne, I mean, the things that we talk about, if we could put that into a picture, things are horrendous. And even talking about angels, and these things are powerful. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure all that's in there too. So yeah, can't wait to turn to a movie or TV show. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's a fun project, and we're piecing things together, and you don't always agree on everything in terms of how you want it to sort of come out, but you have to understand it's also entertainment, and in novels you have to do certain things to do the plot lines and with the characters and things like that. So I'm learning a lot. in terms of fiction writing, because I'm a researcher, not a novelist. So, and the Audible version will be out hopefully by the end of May. I've already heard the first chapter with the voices on it, so look forward to that as well.
Thank you very much for that. So, with that being said, with all these things that you're writing about, and I'm pretty sure you have a very good detail about the things we're going to talk about today. So, especially this topic, talking about Solomon. A lot of people who read the Bible and know him, who read the extra biblical text, have a lot of interesting things that he talks about. But I mean, this is pretty close to like some kind of medieval type of crazy movie. We got demons, we got giants, we got mystical powers, and we have a ring that one ring to rule them all, right? As Lord of the Rings says. So, I mean, whatever you want to start, Gary, but like Dominic said from the beginning, if you can, just lay it out for everybody.
Yeah, and it's a large topic. It's a lot larger than most people would sort of normally perceive. So feel free to jump in and ask some questions and things as we go, because I'm going to probably cover a lot of territory, but we do want to also make sure that people are understanding some of the things that we're talking about. So one of the things we want to keep in mind is that David is the father of Solomon. David was the warrior king, not permitted to build the temple. Solomon is the priest king, right? It was permitted to build the temple. And Solomon starts off very, very well in terms of his start. And, he refortifies all of the cities. He builds the temple. He does all sorts of other construction. He brings a wealthy economic state to bear. He's becoming the envy of other kingdoms with the wealth that they're bringing about. And because of the warrior aspect that David brought out, he's able to negotiate and deal with all of the other countries. But unfortunately, what he does is he brings in wives, which is going to lead him astray. And we see a lot of that. But sort of in between there, you have something that is very important about the wisdom aspect of how smart he actually was, and the wisdom and how he receives this wisdom from God after praying for it. So he is renowned, and he's renowned all around the world. And I'm just going to go off topic just a little bit on this and then weave it back in. So when we want to understand a little bit about prehistory, understand Antichrist, understand that Jesus is the one that Antichrist is going to counterfeit. And you can look at Jesus with his two aspects that I described as the warrior aspect as he comes back for Armageddon, and the priest aspect as he'll take over the Melchizedek order. So that is the Fisher King aspect of polytheism, and Antichrist will have his counterfeit of that. And we know he's going to be, who can make war with the beast? But also in Daniel 11, he is going to have secret knowledge of the covenant and history, and he's going to be able to say things that other people, they won't believe he has the type of knowledge that he has. So again, you see a bit of a duplication in there. So we should not be surprised that many groups draft Solomon into their belief system. And so that's why it starts to get interesting, and why we need to understand who Solomon was and how they draft him in as part of their religion. Because, if we're talking about polytheism, you're thinking, well, how could that be?
Yeah. I'm about to say, I've seen a lot of different Gnostic books and things on the internet of people like looking at Solomon as he was like, as they would, using their own words very loosely here, as a master magician, a master wizard, a warlock. I've heard many things like this, how he's the one that unlocked all the secrets of the universe and the vibrational, and he's the first one to tap into the Christ conscience, as they say. A lot of Gnostic stuff. So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So when we look at Solomon, one of the passages that people are going to go to utilize for their own purposes would be 1 Kings 4:29-30. And in there, it says that Solomon had the wisdom of the East and of Egypt. So, I mean, he had more knowledge than all of that. So he's more knowledgeable than them, but that also implies that he has the knowledge of what happened in the Egyptian religion at the Therapeutate, and also with like the Kabbalist movement as it would come through Judaism from the East, from Babylon, right?
Yeah.
So, but also understand that these types of things are what polytheists are going to grasp on, as they will say, yes, he had knowledge of our religion because he was a polytheist.
Okay.
Right. So what they like to do is they like to draft things out of the Bible so that they can draft the major patriarchs into their counterfeit
Regions.
Religion that has a worldwide basis, and they would look at monotheism as being a religion that went rogue from the original religion of the Therapeutate out of Egypt, or out of the Magi out of Sumeria, introduced by the kings, right? So, and Solomon is a king. He is the third king of Israel. He's the second king of the Judaic bloodline. And so through his bloodline is going to come through the Messiah. So again, you could see why people might want to draft Solomon bloodlines and or legacy into their religion, because it would just sort of increase their ennobleness or pedigree. So he's a popular target, so to speak. So when we look at Solomon, we also have some accounts, and I'm just going to cover off, and we'll come back with a little bit more detail on some of these accounts of Solomon that give you an idea of how they look at him and how they draft him. So if we look at the Quran, for example, we're going to get two passages in the Quran about Solomon. I mean, you get more, because they do look at him as a very important figure. And I'm just going to use the Quran to lead my way into other accounts of him. And so in Quran, in Sod 38, 22 through 40, Solomon is given the power over the wind. You could translate that, if that was coming out of Hebrew, as spirits. But it doesn't leave that to be an open-ended aspect of it, because over the winds and the jinn. So I think they're meaning two different things here, because he could control the summer wind when he wanted to, and as they express that in there. And the jinn is two classes of spiritual beings. One are fallen angels, like Iblis is the Quranic Satan, and he's a jinn. And there are other jinn which are angels, and then there's a lower level of jinn, which are the demigods, or the disembodied spirits of the giants. And so that's where you start to see a bit of a connection into some of the other accounts of him. And also you get an account in Shebath, that's 34, 12 to 13, where it says the jinn actually worked for Solomon to build castles and statues and vessels and things like that. Now, we don't get that in the Bible.
Yeah.
We don't get an account in the Bible, I'm just going to underline that, being a bit repetitive there, about Solomon controlling demons.
That's not in the Bible.
No, we don't get that. Nowhere. And I'm not saying that he couldn't do it. I'm just saying we don't have it. And we certainly don't have as it's connected as we get further into it, where these palaces are extended to the building of the temple, in another account that we're going to talk about. We don't get that anywhere. But I'm not saying that's not possible, with all the power and all of the knowledge that Solomon had. We just don't have it biblically. So I like to be careful on that.
Yeah.
And so in the another account which is important, which goes along with, which is biblical, is Josephus.
Oh, okay.
And what's interesting, what Josephus had to say is that, and this is in Antiquities 8, 40, or Book 8, 45, God gave knowledge of art used against demons. So Josephus is a Pharisee in the time of Jesus.
Yes.
And he's writing the history down so it doesn't get lost, because the Romans are going to start the diaspora after the war.
Yes.
And he also said that he wrote instructions down as to how to perform exorcisms.
Wow.
Yes, and left that as a legacy. And he drove out many demons, and he would also cure diseases caused by demons. So this is in a Josephus account. So
Interesting.
whether or not it's true or not, you get these hints at Solomon had significant power. I mean, if we're talking about now commanding demons to build things, and we have a person that you'd have to say is not as high as what Jesus is, because everything bows to Jesus.
Yes.
Right, below the Father and the Spirit. So so when we look at that sort of aspect of it, this is getting a mythos to him that starts long ago, even before the Quran is even written. And I would think that people writing the Quran may have had knowledge of what maybe Josephus had written down. I mean, I can't say that for sure, but it sounds like there's a bit of a commonality there. So when we look at the secret societies and the Gnostics, they look at Solomon as the great magi. They look at him as the most powerful magi of his age, however long that is. And they say that he gets this power a lot from the knowledge that he has, right?
Yep.
And so he becomes a very, very powerful individual amongst the secret societies. And so he is one of the great masons as well, because of the temple. So they link him back into that sort of cycle and lineage as well. So we should be very well aware that they as in the polytheists, they look at him as a great dark magician, is what we would call it, but they would look at it as a light, because it's the opposite, right? It's inverted in terms of how that we look at things. So all of a sudden now we have, a number of accounts that all want to have a piece of Solomon, and that depending on who you are, how you can draft that for your purposes for him. So let's just sort of keep those in mind. So there's a testament of Solomon that is commonly sort of understood out there as being where most of the information comes from for Solomon. So before I get into that, is there anything that you guys wanted to talk about in terms of what I had laid out?
Go ahead, Dominic. You're unmuted. Go ahead. You have yourself muted, buddy. Click. There you go.
Oh, what Gary's talking about right now is good information about especially the Muslims and what's going on with that, because there's a lot of history on that. And the Egyptian alchemist, I think it's Zomas, discussed Solomon and his powers. And this is a deep story that Gary says. I don't know everything about it like Gary does, but
yeah,
I'm looking forward to hearing more on this topic. It's very interesting.
And something I want to dig into more is that I didn't know, I probably should have read more into it, but I didn't know it was not mentioned anywhere in the Bible about this demon controlling thing. So I guess I heard this from what I remember now, thinking about it, from the Apocrypha. I think it was in the Wisdom of Solomon. And and then another thing too, right, Gary? Flavius Josephus, he wasn't like a believer in Christ, right? So what he's writing down is even, I would say, even more believable, because he's writing things down that he doesn't even, you know what I mean? Like it's like the enemy writing down the truth, what happened on their enemy side. So I find that more believable because he's not writing it down. Oh, this, I believe in Jesus, I'm gonna make Jesus look better. No, he wrote what Jesus did, and you know what I mean. So
and he handled Jesus with kids' gloves. He didn't say a lot about him,
but just enough to know, like, hey, he existed.
This,
and he was
this
here.
guy is more than just a man, and he was certainly mystified by him. So the Testament of Solomon is what you're talking about, is what most people will refer to get to this ring. But again, we don't have this in the Bible. It's considered apocrypha. It does have a lot of polytheist Gnostic sort of inferences to it. But it also sort of blends the two. So it's kind of interesting. So just so that people are aware of it. And what's interesting right out of the gate in the Testament of Solomon is they call him the Sage Solomon. And most people sort of look at that, well, that's an interesting term, but they don't think much more about it. But that's not a monotheist term. So in the occult, a sage means that you have power of protection and great wisdom, and that you're able to banish and control demons and dark energies. So again, the sage is a polytheist term for a polytheist adept priest, which they would draft him as one of the great masons of all time. And so he was also a sage as a wise philosopher and a teacher. So it can mean all of that. But understand that they look at their wise teachers as people sent on the way to help people evolve into godhood. So it's not meant in the same way as we would look at a teacher in monotheism, as in Jesus teaching the disciples not to have us turn into gods, but to have a way to have everlasting life and be resurrected, to be like angels, even though we have human fathers. So, and what's also interesting is sage is also a spice. It's used for cooking, but it's also used for burning,
smoking
in
stuff.
rituals. Yeah. And most people don't know that because it's designed to drive out negative energy and evil spirits.
Yeah, hey, go into that a little bit really quick, Gary, because you know what? I have people, let me sage your, different apartments live in. Someone, some random girl I would meet. Oh, I dated her for, 2 days. Oh, I could feel an evil spirit. I need to bring some sage in here. And little do I know, they probably put a freaking curse on me. So what is this smoke thing, man? It smells good, though. I'll give it that.
Yeah, well, just the burning of sage or the burning of incense is not good or evil. It's, if it's pleasant and you like it. But when you start to use it within a ritual, then all of a sudden now you're into polytheism. Okay. So that's the thing to be careful of. So, and if there's images of gods or other things of the religion, you want to be careful that you're participating in some sort of ritual as well. It's kind of like, doing yoga. It's a ritual, a polytheist ritual to put you in contact with the divine essence. So be careful of the music, be careful of whatever might be chanting, be careful of whatever is being used to decorate the room so that you're not participating in a ritual. Because, just the stretching and stuff like that, that part's not evil. But what it's used to create a portal and to invite in a spirit, that's a whole different ballgame. We're to astral planes. So when we look at this, we get the introduction of this idea of a ring. Okay, and we don't get a specific ring that's talked about in the Bible as it relates to Solomon, but we'll get there in terms of how we should understand that Solomon likely had a ring. But let's just not get ahead of ourselves yet. So, and the ring in there comes from Michael. So they're drafting an angel in there. So again, it's kind of looking, well, that sounds pretty Christian, and he's an archangel. Well, understand that the polytheists understand Michael as an archangel too, as their enemy, as an archangel. So just because they use a particular name doesn't mean that we don't We don't want to be seduced because they're using an angelic name. And it's a ring that comes from Michael, and it's an engraved stone. So a ring that has some sort of stone, could be jewelry, but it's got an engraving on it. And it comes from the Lord of Sabaoth. Okay, well, if that sounds familiar, and again, watch out that they do a lot of double entendres. We actually get the Lord of Sabaoth twice in the New Testament. And it comes in Romans 9:29 as the Lord of Sabaoth, and also in James 5:4. Now, Sabaoth is a Greek god, son of Ialdabaoth or Domeric. So the Gnostics draft onto that as saying Jesus is the son of God, and he is Ialdabaoth, and Sabaoth is his son.
Okay.
So want to be careful of that. I'm not saying they've totally mistranslated that, but you should have had a better translation than a Greek word that went in there for a god.
Yeah.
Right. So what they're talking about is a term that comes out of the Old Testament, where it is Lord of hosts. So that's going to be in that Hebrew, Jehovah or Yahweh Saba. And Saba is how they're transliterating that through Greek for it to be Sabaoth. So it's saying two things. You have the Lord of a polytheist God and the Lord of hosts. And both are Lord of hosts in both the loyal angels and the disloyal angels. So there's a double entendre that's being nurtured here. And in the New Testament, we probably shouldn't have had Sabaoth in there, because that's going to be referred to Jesus as the Lord of hosts. And they should have translated it similarly as how it would show up in the Old Testament and use that as the typology, but they did not. So they put that in there for people to use as we get closer to the end time to confuse people. And there's a lot of markers that will be done to do so. And so Sabaoth is, depicted as in Gnosticism as a dragon type of God that has 7 heads.
Oh, wow.
He's like a Leviathan type creature, or a Hydra type of creature. And so this ring comes from with the authority of Lord Sabaoth, or Lord Saba, or Lord of the hosts, and as it shows up. But Sabaoth, as it's recorded in the Testament of Solomon. So that is giving authority with this ring from whichever god it's coming from. This is a standard polytheist thing, as well as what we'll see to a certain extent with the monotheist kings as well. So this is what you would understand as a signet ring with an engraving on it. And a signet we get in the Bible, and it means, an engraved ring, but it can also mean a stamp with an engraving on it as well, to stamp on the wax seals. And so it's showing the legal authority and identity and bloodline in there. So it'll be the seal of the house of David, you would say here, or the house of Solomon from a biblical perspective. But if it's not, but if they're drafting them into the polytheists, the authority is not coming from God. It's coming from that specific celestial mafia godfather and that genealogical line. So it would be more of a house of dragon.
Oh, wow.
Which is why I gave that description of who Sabaoth was.
7 heads.
Yes, 7 serpentine dragon heads. And so the ring was worn by the king. And if he used it, and he would put his seal of authority on legal documents and edicts. And that would carry as an extension of the power coming through from whichever deity it's representing. And eventually the ring is expanded to become a different, larger ring, which is the crown. but it's the ring that we're going to focus more on here today. And so again, we get signet. We get it in Haggai 2:2-3 and Genesis 38:18, and so it's used many, many sort of times. But we also have a ring that shows up in the Bible as well. So in Esther 3:10, you have a ring from King Ahasuerus, who gives his ring to, you're going to like this, and Ahasuerus is a Persian king, right? Or could be Medes if I've mixed them up on the dynasties here. But he gives his ring to Haman the Agagite.
What?
The royal bloodline of the Agag kingships of the Amalekites and the Amalekim.
That makes sense. Wow.
Right.
Aren't the Amalekites the blood drinkers, the ones that
yeah, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So now we have a ring that's being given to Haman, who is going to try and wipe Israel from the face of the earth with all the authority of a beast emperor. And so we also have in Genesis 4 or 41, 42, where Pharaoh gives his ring to Joseph, and Joseph is going to be a co-pharaoh of that time. So he's going to use that to extend Pharaoh's authority in his name, right?
Okay.
So we do get this ring talked about biblically, but we're seeing it more of a use from the polytheists. So we do know we have things that come down through archaeology about the House of David and some other kings as well. So I expect they were using seals as well. Did they actually use the ring? We don't know. Or was it a stamp? Or was it both? We don't know. But certainly the polytheists have grafted that ancient mythology and legacy from before the time back into prehistory and even to before the flood into, I would say, a drafting of Solomon into their belief system and pedigree for the coming Antichrist, but as part of the House of David, right? So just let you in on that before we move on a little bit more.
Oh, yes, definitely. That's Dominic. Your mic is this guy's mic, man. But yeah, go ahead. You're still muted, buddy. You muted yourself.
Yeah, that crackling noise.
No, that's okay.
There was a the Muslims described this ring as with sapphire and the strongest of silver, and they describe it as it illuminated like bolts of lightning. Yeah. This is what the Muslims say, and you mentioned the Egyptians. Yeah. You mentioned I don't know if you mentioned Zumas, who also talked about Solomon's ring. So this is the Egyptian alchemist who only recognized metallurgy of Jerusalem and Egyptian in this time. So
yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, so typically the rings were made of gold or silver. Both are important for that authority and metal aspect. Sapphire is a common thought to be one, just as the Shatia in Jewish mysticism that held all the knowledge of the antediluvian world and all the knowledge of the world. Some people call it the Emerald Tablet, but that's a common jewel that would be associated with knowledge and wisdom, I guess is my point on that. So did you want to go on a little bit more on that, or?
Oh, no, it's totally up to you. I'm just fascinated by the Egyptians and the Muslims, that they have historical, according to them, it could be nonsense, but they do have something about it. And for me, that's interesting because it's written, even though we're looking at the esoteric. I wonder if there's any sprinkles of truth in there that Solomon did really have some kind of ring.
He probably did. Now, it would not be used in a way that necessarily a polytheist would use it. and in the way that we get down through the history, but you never know. It's a possibility. You would think that Solomon would have the ability just through the Holy Spirit to command and do things, but who knows? Or maybe he had to do it, maybe he did this in later years, who knows? We're not really told that. But what we do know is in the Testament of Solomon, he's dealing with a lot of different demons. And you get demons like Ornias, who's said to be a son of Uriel. So they've drafted another one that's out of the Apocrypha of the KJV and of Enoch. But Uriel, if he was a loyal archangel, wouldn't have produced an offspring. So again, is it just a corruption there, or is it a name that would be similar to Uriel, just as Baal also has a name that's very similar to Raphael, but it's spelled a little bit differently. This was spelled the same. So, and also Asmodeus is another demon that is being talked about and controlled in the Testament of Solomon. And then there's something called a Calatrop. It's the name of, and it's a she demon named Obezuth. And it had all sorts of spikes about her. It's a really interesting sort of evil spirit. And it is the image for the crest of dragons, is their title, in terms of that spiked spirit. So it's hard to know how many that, because I mean, I don't spend tons of time, or did spend tons of time on some of these gospels. I would just sort of glean and pull out the interesting aspects, like the blaring polytheism, or just because it's about a particular individual, I would take notes on them. So as you move down further into the occult side in terms of the drafting in, and you have something called the Keys of Solomon, and also known as the Book of Spirits of Gotia. And this one has many translations, including one by Alex Crawley. So this one's going to go deep and ugly, so to speak. And in there, it lists the 72 demons by name that Solomon was controlling. Again, do I know that? 72 is an important number, mostly with the occult, and typically ruling over the nations, and typically that's more associated with fallen angels and demons. So that's why this thing is interesting, but it's more from a polytheist understanding. And so it's a ring according to that understanding as a magic circle of Solomon, part of the ring imagery. It's a circle, and circle is used in rituals in polytheism as part of the ring understanding. And it's used for protection from spirits, which is interesting because I guess if you're commanding them, they may not always be as willing to be commanded, and there may be an engagement is what they may be inferring with that. And also there is in this, it says he has a pyramid or a triangle that's used in his imagery as well, that helps him command the demons as well. So now you see more sort of polytheism coming in, and also a pentagram of Solomon, which is the seal of the spirit that's engraved into the signet.
Okay, wow.
So they get into a lot of details in terms of what they believe on that, and understanding the signet is an engraving on a stone, or for a stone for a ring, a king's ring. And so it's all of this was used to stop the spells of the demons and the curses of the demons and turn them against the demons. And so Solomon, as you can see, is this great sorcerer king of the ring, as they understand him in polytheism. So sorcerer of the king of the Ringlord tradition, to be specifically. And we'll go deeper into that as we go on. And that he is the Magi, as I said, of the highest order, complemented by his wisdom. So as we look at the Keys of Solomon, and again, it's a large polytheist sort of book, but understand is that this is a celebrated thing within polytheism of his power as being somebody who would be like Beelzebub, who controls those demons. So they're making an association with Satan here. Beelzebub, it's an allegory for Satan as we understand that as it comes through the Bible. So it's important to understand how they look at these things, but that they could seal the spirit with these incantations, put them on a seal of control, a legal doctrine, so to speak, of control. So before I move on to the Lord of the Rings and connections with that, I just sort of laid down the hint. I thought, okay, before I move on from that end of the polytheist tradition, I'd let you in.
Go ahead, Dominic. Man,
there was I think it was a king of Jerusalem. I don't know what king it was. I have it in my notes somewhere. But it said, I could be wrong, it said he was using Solomonic incantations to bind demons. And he also had a ring. I'm looking for his name.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that individual, but
I'll come back to it. But now, what about the electrum, the 7 vessels that supposedly Solomon made up, and that's how he contained demons in these vessels? Kind of sounds like almost like kivas, and these are said in mysticism that they're sealed up below in the abyss under Golgotha. I mean, this is all, we just
sounds interesting. Huh.
Yeah. So, and again, in these accounts, he not only did he use demons to build buildings and palaces, but also objects, including vessels and basins and certain things. So there was an ability to imprison these demons in one of these types of things. So the best example to understand that is through the genie that's in the lamp or a vessel. And genie is a derivative of jinn that we talked about
Islam.
from Islam that Solomon was said to control. And so, and it wasn't just a lamp that they could be sealed in. It could be like a jar. It could be in like all sorts of different things. And then those demons would be usually buried away so they couldn't get out because these things did horrible things, right?
Yep.
And so they wanted to make sure they were never going to be released.
Yeah, I guess these vessels of electrum were jars or bottles. I had some notes here about Eleazar that performed exorcisms in front of people, and he was doing incantations of a Solomonic, whatever he was saying.
Yeah,
and that was a king. Go ahead.
Again, if what Josephus is saying is accurate, where he wrote down these instructions on things and it was used coming downstream through other kings, then that would make some sense. But there was also so much falling away of Israel during the times of the kings, and then they spent time in the southern kingdom spent time in Babylon and Media, where they would have learned all about the polytheism there. They brought a lot of that polytheism back with us. It's hard to know how those traditions get inserted, but certainly we see with the various looking for the word for the commentaries on the Bible that the rabbis did. It's like a companion to the Targum. I was going to say Talmud is like that, but it's the Targum. Yeah. They brought that back with them. Once they lost, the people have lost the Jewish language, and they did the Targums in Aramaic. And you see things like Lilith being entered into the story in the Targums, and a whole bunch of other things that are clearly Sumerian and Sumer history and Mesopotamian religions. So it's hard to know where some of those traditions entered in. But again, I don't think we can rule out that whatever Solomon did do wouldn't be passed down to many of the kings, because he's been iconic right from the time he lived forward. So
Yeah.
people would venerate that. And just as Jesus eliminated and depossessed demons and commanded them, one expects a certain amount of control that was there with the Levites and with Solomon as a priest king. So, but I would expect from a biblical perspective, it would be more of a direct approach and not with the ring.
Right. And what's interesting, there was a archaeological dig, and this it was they found I guess a ring or something in Israel, and it was King Hezekiah, and the signet had two winged sun discs. Besides them was the Ankh of Egypt.
Yeah.
So that's kind of strange. And then there's a Christian pilgrimage in 333 CE, and it is said that that this ring of Solomon could be seen in a crypt near the pools of Bethsaida.
Bathsheba. Yep.
Yep. And also around 381, it says the ring by Ageria. It says that the horn to anoint kings, the oil, and the ring, it was on display in the chapel in Golgotha.
Well,
That's a lot of interesting stuff.
Well, and we're told, how many times did Israel backslide and Judah backslide, and the kings would be, representing who they believed in the legal sort of authority. And I don't know, how many of the king's seals would have had sun discs on it and things like that. But what we do know, there was a continual backsliding and renewal of the covenant throughout their history. And eventually they had to suffer the full curses of the covenant because of that. So,
and you mentioned venerating, and they did venerate this ring and this horn. They would kiss it and pray to it, I guess, whatever. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on back then.
Well, and biblically we get also the raising up of the copper seraphim from the desert that pops up throughout the ages of the kings and things. And so this was not uncommon to backslide that far, right? To worship these types of things. So now when we look at modern kings, they take all of their traditions from ancient prehistory and traditions. So, when King Charles took his official ritual oath that we're not supposed to do from a biblical instruction, he's swearing an oath to God. But we don't know to which God. But the seal or the coat of arms on the seal that they do it with will represent what authority that's coming from. So when you look at the lion and the unicorn that's associated, and or the dragon coming out of the whales and the Prince of Wales, they're showing fallen angelic celestial mafia godfathers, and to a specific one who they received their authority from to rule over a specific nation. So that king's ring, as it comes down through history, just as that ritual to swear an oath to a genealogical god who reigns from the council of the gods on Mount Hermon, which is important as we dive deeper into this. These rituals have been passed down through all of the beast kings, all of the Gentile kingships. And Israel wanted to be like other nations, and they would adopt some of these different things to do the same sort of symbols for ruling. One would hope they wouldn't put the pagan symbols on there, but that anything, could have happened. So when we look at what does a king's ring mean? Well, the king's ring is the royal seal. And, up to, and still used today, but not to the same degree. But in the past, that was their authority that declared it was law. It was legal authority. It was an extension of their power, carried their full authority. And it carried on their bloodline, from whom they received the divine right to rule from. So it's important to understand that when you went in and you kissed the king's ring, you're kissing the divine representative of the God represented on that ring. And so this allows you to do a lot of things after the rise of Christianity in plain sight. And people think, well, they're swearing to the God of the Bible. Maybe some did. I would say most royals did not. And remember, a royal is a king of God in polytheism, as you take the etymology back. From a specific genealogical God. So we should understand that the king's ring and the king's crown, these are polytheist things that typically we wouldn't see Jesus use. You never saw the judges use, but maybe some of the kings did to a certain degree, but we don't know how polytheistic that sort of became.
So do you think, Gary, these items that they use, the reason why they're so attached to different items is because there's a spirit attached to it? Or what is the reason why they need all these different artifacts? Or, you know, just in general, they need statues, they need gauntlets, you know, they need crowns, you know, for what?
They all honors the pantheon of gods, and they're trying to reflect what is done in the polytheist heaven as is done on earth. Okay. So you have God that has, and everything is counterfeited in terms of what God does in heaven. So you have a throne room in heaven.
Okay.
Well, so what does Satan do? He develops his own council of the gods and his own thrones. So just as around each of those thrones, you're going to have watcher angels of like cherubim and ophanim. You're going to have that. That's part of those throne rooms. Each of the major 7 gods are going to have their own throne room as well. And each of the nations will have their own god and a throne room of the 70 nations. In Psalms 82 and Deuteronomy 32, as we get there, I won't go through the minutiae of those details, but they rule over the kings. And so the visible kings are going to show that same type of imagery reflected in their reign and in their heraldry, which has their genealogical connections back to their standards, right? And on their seals of authority. And they're going to honor through idols and imagery and other ways, and through rituals and worship, they're going to honor their pantheon of gods in all ways that they can.
Yes. So with that being said, with these council rooms, something that I came across by something a few years ago, and it's kind of relevant right now. So there's this modern pyramid that was built, I think, in around 2006, but it's still very well used today. It's a modern pyramid. It's about 62 meters high, 203 feet high. It's in Astana, Kazakhstan, and at the very top of the pyramid, get this, Gary, they have 200 seats. How many fallen angels are there? 200, right?
Exactly.
And this place is always empty. They've never seen nobody really actually fill those seats. So are these seats being filled at night or some secret ritual, or but it's there for a reason. I mean, who's going to build this big pyramid and have just 200 seats? You know, so it's just like one of these council rooms, right? This is like just one of many, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
You heard of that place, right?
Mm-hmm. I have.
Like glass,
it was
glass see-through. Yeah.
Quite popular to be seen around on the internet and stuff like 5-7 years ago.
Yeah.
And, one of those places that's trying to line up to be a new religious center of the world. Expect to see more. I mean, Dubai is going to be another one. We could have as many as 7 of these religious sites around the world.
10 kings.
Or 10. Yeah. Hard to know how many there's going to be. But but everything they do honors their gods. All the currencies that have come downstream over the years have imagery to honor their kings and their gods.
Yeah, I'm going to give you one more nugget, Gary, and check this out. So we have, like I said, about 200 fallen angels, and on Earth right now, we can record with our own eyes. You can Google. There has to be 200, but there's 198 craters we can find on Earth right now. Is that another coincidence that 200 angels fell from heaven? Because think about it, Gary. When a meteor falls, right, it doesn't matter. Like, and let's just for the audience, that whether you believe in a flat Earth, a globe Earth, doesn't really matter, because when a meteor falls, it's not always a perfect circle. Some skip, and all these craters are perfectly like this, as if everything fell down straight. So that's another thing too. We got 200 seats to 198 craters. I'm pretty sure 2 of them haven't found, but I think that's very interesting just to throw out there, Gary. I mean, 200 angels, 200 seats, 200 craters, and on the list goes with 200, right? But that's another story for another day. But let's get into this replica of Token, whatever his name is, that just somehow remade the Bible in his own way, and very close to it too, because even the bad guy in the Bible, in Lord of the Rings, is Solomon, the bad guy, right? Then we got Gandalf the Grey.
Yeah.
As you explain this, can you also, like, if you do know the answers, like, how do these characters resemble the biblical characters? You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's a lot of characters in the Lord of the Rings.
I mean, the main one, so I basically want you to cover, because when you look at Lord of the Rings, it's almost like you're living in the pre-flood world. You have giants, you have dwarves, you have elves, So, like, start from there if you can.
Yeah. So understand, first of all, that the Lord of the Rings is an antediluvian story.
Yes.
Before the flood. And in fact, at the end of the trilogy, you have all of these different types of creatures and beings are sailing away on a boat, because now it's the age of man. That's the imagery of the flood at that demarcation point. And so the stories are about what happened before the flood, but because nothing is new under the sun, you see similar things that are happening after the flood as well. And so, like the ring in the ring in the Lord of the Rings, and understand there's more than one ring, but there's one exclusive ring that is designed to reunite all of the rings, right? So understand the allegory there. Well, this is made in Mount Sauron, and it is an engraved ring. It's a signet ring. So we're talking about the same sort of imagery here, and it's written in Elven script. Now, before Elven, yes, script that lights up with fire. And so Sauron, what Tolkien does is he takes compound words for names and he pulls them from a lot of different sort of sources. So in this case, Sauron is S-A-R to start off with. That's the Hebrew word for a king or a prince, as in an angel.
Oh, wow.
So it can be used as a king, but it can also be used as for Michael the Great Prince.
Yeah.
And it can also be used in relationship to the Sarim or the Saranim. There's similar words in meaning the same thing, of the Philistine kings that are used as divine giant kings of this world. So understand the power of his knowledge, Tolkien's knowledge, and depth of that knowledge as he weaves so many different things into these stories. He was a great storyteller, but he was definitely a cult. So
yeah, definitely a cult.
So you have all of these different races that are in Lord of the Rings as well.
Yes.
And so the one that we want to sort of focus on, though, would be more like the White Elves.
Yes.
Okay. And so the White Elves are the elven race of the Tuatha De Danann in polytheist history. These are the giants. They're not shown as a full giant, but they're shown as a much larger elf, because typically they're part of the elementals that are the smaller ones, and they're usually called dark elves and a couple other types of elves, but these are white elves. These are the Shea people, S-I-D-H-E, Sedai, Seed, Shea, whole bunch of different ways you pronounce that same sort of word. And the elven race of the Tuatha De Danann is the dragon elven bloodline of their dragon Messiah.
Yes.
Okay. And so this ring is the ring. The ultimate is going to be the ring for the dragon Messiah, even though there's 10 other or many other rings. I'm not sure how many they actually have. And it's called Precious, this one ring.
Yes.
But I'm trying to weave some people in as names as we go in here. So What would be some of the names that they're weaving in? Like you have, Gandalf, elf, as being a transliteration of Elvin or elf. So Gandalf. And he's a wizard of Isari and of a bloodline order of priests.
And he falls from heaven in
Yeah.
the book. He falls like a shooting star.
Yeah. And so Saruman, the leader of the Asari wizards, right? Who is the one who has this ring that's made. And Saruman, as in sorrow, as in dinosaur, as in a Nahash, as in a serpent being.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah. So have other ones in there, like I won't go through all of the names, but just give people an idea. Yeah. It's like Glandfindel. Well, that's got An in there for Anu. It's got Elf in there, and it's got Find in there.
Oh my Lord.
And El, and Find is a Shay or a Sade. So he is just unbelievable on how he mixes these names in, and he uses like Big Gil, which is Il, which is the Sumerian transliteration of El or Al for a god or an angel, and angel names, right? So
you're good at it. I would have known this if you didn't tell me. Just see a bunch of made up names. The only thing that I see from the show that I pick up is the L. Everything has L, Elohim.
A lot of that.
What you're like, telling me is
Dano, Dano Thor, Danu, the Tuatha Danu, and Thor, the god.
Never think about that until you tell me, man.
Yeah, so just understand how much work that he put in to create these names and things. And
Aragon, I hope he has a good name. Yeah. Is his name good at least? Aragon? He's only human, right?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Well, it's the heir of the ancient kingships. But Aragon is basically, you look at the Y and the G and the J as a Y sound. So like you get like George is like Jorge.
Okay.
In that sort of understand.
Isn't it half
so now you go from Aragon to Aryan.
Okay, yeah, and it's also, isn't it known he's half elf? Like he's half elf too. He's a hybrid, right? Isn't he in the book? Yeah, so
they got hybrids and everything. And also understand that there were 5 tribes of Aryans, and one of those tribes is Anu.
I didn't know that. I would love to do a show about that.
Yeah, so the Tuatha Danu, as they're also known as, or the Tatanu in the Ugaritic texts, which is, and the D and the T were interchangeable, and they are. So you would see Datan showing up in the Hebrew as Dadan. It's the same word.
Wow.
Or you could go, so now we have 2 Ds there, you could take that over to the Greek and use 2 T's there, and now it's Titan.
Oh, wow. Damn.
Yeah. So again, they use these types of things, and we need to be aware of them. So understand, so we have all of these different elemental groups of beings that are in the Lord of the Rings, like the hobbits, and the dwarves. And the dwarves, they were ones that lived in the earth in standard occult history, and they made the weapons for the demigods. So
like
how do they
weapons too?
Yeah, and super weapons. So what do you see them doing in Lord of the Rings? They're in the ground of mountains in these massive factories building weapons.
Yeah, with magic too. And where does this magic come from? I know in the show, in the book, but what would that allegory be to, the real world? Like, because every time they make a weapon, there's almost like a spirit they put in it or something. You know what I mean? They have like these powers to these weapons.
Yeah, and again, we don't know whether that's a demonic spirit. Is it an artificial intelligence spirit?
Something, yeah.
Or an angelic spirit, but I wouldn't go as far as angelic. I would suggest probably more demonic, of a disembodied spirit of a giant, right?
Just like when,
or it could be, or an elemental spirit might be more accurately, because like the gnomes were in charge of all of the knowledge and all of the genealogies and all of the technology.
Yeah.
So they would be more akin to being associated with whatever technology also went into that weaponry. And that weaponry could recognize your DNA. It wouldn't work for other people.
Oh yeah, that's true too. It kind of reminds me of Thor's hammer. That's a whole different story though. But I think
Yeah.
that's technology. That whole thing, the hammer, just coming back to him. I don't know.
Yeah. So in there we have this precious ring that's designed to, you know, um, rule all of the kings with their own rings, right? So there's a leader. So just as Antichrist will rise amongst the 10 kings and rule the 10 kings, as Revelation 17 talks about, that's the allegory that they're using for their dragon Messiah. That would have happened because nothing new is under the sun before the flood. So
Yeah,
there would have been an antediluvian Antichrist. Maybe it was somebody like Atlas or Orion or
yeah,
King Sudras in the Sanskrit version, who defeated the 10 kings and ruled over them in the Sanskrit version. So,
yeah.
and Sudras and Maitreya, same god, just one's in Shambhala, one's in Argata in the Sanskrit versions, is coming back in the end time. And Lord Maitreya is like a transliteration of Mitra, right?
Yes.
As a destroyer god who incarnates and destroys the world by fire and then recreates. So very much akin to an Azazel god. So understand those types of kind of connections that are being written into polytheist entertainment history and prophecy. So they want to unite this ring under one ring. So they want to create a round table, an assembly ruled over by one super messiah type figure. And that's the Ringlords of the Scythians, as we would understand that in the Tuatha De Danann in Indo-Aryan sort of history. And before the flood, all of the kings in the Sumerian lore were given their authorization at Nippur, which is Mount Hermon at the Cedar Forest, but in the earth in another dimension where they would receive that. Same location as in the Ugaritic text at Mount Saphon, which is meaning north. It's not at Tyr. It's biblically, the Bible calls Mount Hermon the mountain of the north, Saphon.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's where the council of gods are located. The
That's,
Baalim Council, both in Ugaritic texts and in the Bible. And there was not only the Council of the Gods, but the assembly of the Datanu, the giants, the Tuatha De Danann, the Shea people, the White Elves.
jeez. What a wow. Everything's just straight up on one piece, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Dominic, your thing to say, Dominic, your thing's muted, but okay. So I wanted to go into this. As far as that goes, I mean, that's all like wow, all these different names, but how close are we to because I found something interesting in the Lord of the Rings. In real life, you're either gonna live and die, and then you're gonna be resurrected to live in hell forever or be in heaven forever. But I thought it was interesting that in Lord of the Rings, the elves specifically, they can live forever as long as they're not immortal, but they have forever youth, if that makes sense. So basically, they can live forever as long as I mean, you can kill them like any other human, you stab them, whatever, they will die. But if you don't touch them or you don't, they don't go in danger, they can live forever. I mean, I never heard of a lifespan like that. It's a very interesting lifespan. Is there any allegory to that?
Yeah. So understand the White Elves as giants with a counterfeit immortal spirit.
Okay.
So in ancient technology, they had the ability to heal themselves
Okay.
unless you took the head. But they also had technology like the sarcophagus, or as in what we learn about with the FOIA request from the Hillary Clinton office for the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh, yes.
Yeah. So there's a technology, and one presupposes that if we're just catching up to the DNA technology that they had before the flood, then they could create clones of themselves as sleeves or as oikatarians to transfer that consciousness into. So that's how you kind of get there with that sort of allegory, that they are immortal gods, but within the physical universe. They're not like a fallen angel that could travel into other dimensions. And you can only get there. Well, actually, the original accounting of Genesis 6:1-4, where you have the giants that are created, God steps in to limit all flesh to live for 120 years, and that the spirit is not going to from that is rooted in God, in this case, through the fallen angels, that they pass on that immortal spirit, that spirit's not going to rest amongst men forever. So what happens is that their bodies are going to die, but they're still an immortal spirit. So they're either going to roam the earth as a spirit, or they're going to somehow get to their heaven in Hades or Sheol, or they're going to go to the pit prison as part of the terrible ones, to be in the sides of the pit prison, as Ezekiel 32 talks about. So as we move forward, if we catch up to that technology, one deduces that they have sleeves or oiketerians that they can transfer those spirits into and continue to interact physically. Otherwise, they're going to be without a place to rest, just as they're described as devils and daemons in the New Testament.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
These Ringlords are the Scythian Ringlords of that assembly, both before and after the flood, and where they receive their divine right to rule, that the kings like King James are famous for, right?
Yes.
And so this Ringlord is also understood as the ring as a wheel, just as their worship wheel of the 8 Sabbaths that they have, right? And they worshipped in a circle. They did pilgrimages in a circuit or a circle. And so things that are like a circle would be the Ouroboros, which is the symbol of the Ringlords, which is the serpent enclosed, biting its tail, as their main sort of imagery. And so when we look at the rings and we look at the crowns and then we look at the religion, that's all projecting their authority through the religion and the governorship in the sort of the hierarchy. And so this Council of the Kings, you might know them as in the Grail traditions of the bloodlines of these descendants. The Knights of the Round Table is just an allegory for the assembly of Detanu, or the assembly of Nephilim kings at Nippur, or Anunnaki kings at Nippur. It's that circle. It's power. It's the religion. And it has so many other sort of imageries as they move forward. And that they were the dragon and grail kings of the Ouroboros, or the Oribus, which is that serpent. So that's part of their symbol. So as the governorship, you need to see a connection to the dragon and to what that ring of Sauron, Saurus as in a dragon, and understand dinosaur is the word that replaced dragon for use in that same application, right? And that this is the ancient organizational structure that they're trying to bring about for the end time of 10 kings, which is going to be in that circle, that assembly of 10 kings. And then that one king with that one ring is going to rise above them. So you might find this kind of interesting as well, because it's polytheist and it's an Aryan organization, been misrepresented through misinformation and disinformation as a right-wing group, because National Socialists are left-wing,
of course,
by their name and definition. But the KKK.
Oh yeah.
So it comes from the two of the K's comes from Kyklos or Kyklos, Kyklos, meaning a circle.
Okay. What's the next one mean?
And I'm just losing power here, so I'm going to plug in. I apologize.
No, this is getting interesting. Hey,
yeah. And so you have clan, which can also be spelled in the old languages as with a K, which would be the third K or sound, and or understood as a knight of the clan of that table. And what a knight of the clan was a chief warrior of a tribe, or king, because they were the chief warriors as well. So
what's the third K?
Yeah, that is the third K. So
So what does
KK
that
is
translate to?
Kiklos.
Night.
Well, it's just showing you how they implement things. And if you look through all of their imagery, they have dragons and
Yeah, about to
realms, and
say.
yeah, it's just
It's like the Night at the Round Table kind of replica type of
yes, that's what
thing.
it
Or
is.
what? Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yes, and they put their headquarters in Atlanta, which is
I mean,
on double entendre for Atlantis, that were
that's very
originally
interesting.
depicted as serpents and Aryans.
Oh man.
So yeah, so and then we get another thing that they would like, that they would take that in part probably back to a certain degree, is the triple K out of the Bible. And if
What's
people
that?
don't know, yeah, if the people don't know what the triple
What's
K
that?
out of the Bible is in the land that God gives Abraham. He lists 10 nations. Most people only sort of remember the mighty seven that show up in the time of the conquest. But there's actually what I call the mighty 10 there, because there's the triple K. There's the Kenim, as in Kenites. There's the Kenazim, as in Kenizzites. And there's the Cadmonim, or Cadmonites, as they're called. And these are all giants that predate Kenaz, or any names like that that come downstream in Genesis 36, because this is Genesis 15. This is a fair period in generations before their patriarchs could even show up. These are giants of the East. And so, and the ancient ones, as you take those words back into the original Hebrew and Semitic, ancient of the East, and they would be considered like the Olamim of Elam.
Yeah,
Olam means ancient.
that's wild.
Yeah, so there's obviously some bloodline connections in with this secret society.
Now, now
That's
that
an
you're telling
initiatory
me,
organization.
no, really quick, Gary. Now that you're telling me this, I just saw a movie the other day that made no sense to me up until you just told me this about the KKK. So, I just watched a recent movie. It's like a year and a half old. It's called One Battle After Another.
Yep.
Long story short, it's about a bunch of what are those people called where they hate the government and they think they're taking away their freedom, like a bunch of freedom fighters, right? But anyways, the long story short, the main actor in the movie, or the protagonist, is Leonardo DiCaprio. He's the guy that's a freedom fighter. You know, the government is fascist. We need to blow up the government. You know, that kind of mindset, right? And the guy going after him is Sean Penn in the movie, right? So long story short, in the movie, Sean Penn is like this decorated police officer, military guy, FBI guy. He works for everybody, right? And he ends up just being noticed by the elite, right? And you're bringing this K. So in the movie, there's this KKK group, right? And they're just above in the movie, like they're above the BS. They say, you know, the pointed hats, you know, the torches. They're past that. These are like above, like they see those people as slaves, right? So I found it very interesting. I don't know if we can connect this, but in the movie, they're representing this, like the KKK cult. Their ultimate god is Saint Nicholas. They call themselves the Christmas god. Like, oh, Merry Christmas, praise Saint Nicholas. Like, it's but it's so like real, man. Like, it's all Aryan. You have any kind of blood lineage leakage into your blood, you're not welcome to be in the thing. So I thought it was very interesting that you said that, because in this movie they're making the people with the little pointed hats, they're just like the pawns, but the real ones are the Saint Nicholas Christmas occult. And you know how movies are, Gary. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio and Sean Penn are not going to be in a movie with a bunch of nonsense. It's going to be some kind of allegory to it, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you ever heard of that?
I've not seen that movie, but you have to understand their understanding of Santa Claus is a whole.
Odin.
Yeah, it's going back to Odin. So
that's when the
as
movie
a two-horned god. So, and with the elves and everything that go along with it, right? So it's the same type of imagery that's put in. So I was just going to finish off on, just because I added into the KKK there. What it really means is, you sort of translate it, it means tribes of the ring.
Oh wow.
Tribes with, and represented by that tribe's leader, and that was a hero and a warrior and as a knight. So again, knight of the round table, knight of the KKK, hero, giant kings. It's the same Ringlord tradition, just in a little bit different format. But I mean, when you have, like, names like the Grand Dragon,
Yes, in the movie too. The leader was the grand dragon. This is the little dragon. This is you're gonna be the new dragon. Yeah, in the movie, all the dragon stuff was there too, and it's weird because it's like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and they got Cyclops
Santa
and
Claus,
Titans
dragons.
and all. I mean, just understand it for what they're broadcasting, of what it actually is, and not what we're told it is.
Yes, exactly. Because that
And of
movie
course,
freaked me out.
And the KKK were created by Southern Freemasons.
Yes, and there were a bunch of Democrats, from what I heard.
They were.
Yeah,
they were absolutely. So again, it's just understanding the story and the narrative. So when you get into the Lord of the Rings, right, you're getting their history of what happened before the flood and through their biases. But don't ever think that they don't think in terms of what we're told through the Bible, that nothing is new under the sun.
Yes.
And that it's going to be like the days of Noah, both before and after the flood. So their end time looks a lot like ours. It's just seen.
They're winning in their version.
In their version, it has a different outcome than ours. But they want to bring that on, and you're going to see a blending of that imagery. But they've prepared us to accept their imagery to be more easily deceived.
Yeah. Yes. Think about it. It's very because we're so deep now into this free information age that when you see things on movies, you think they're having they think have your best interests on movies. Oh, this movie's about us. No, it's not. Ain't no movie gonna get past the Hollywood without it. Disrespecting Christianity in some way.
Yeah, and this this ultimate ring corrupts. So it's more powerful
in the movie,
than the other rings, and it can make you invisible, and you can
demons.
Also see demons and see into other dimensions, and therefore you can receive more knowledge and power. So when we look at the imagery of what they're talking about, we should see some sort of ring imagery come about in the end time as well.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just a matter of how that's going to sort of come about. And people will always say, you talked about a lot of peoples, but nobody ever talks about the orcs.
Yes.
Where do they come from?
Speaking of that, really quick, Gary, I was about to get into that. I want to get into the goblins because we have like 40 minutes or so.
Okay.
You have the goblins and you have the orcs. My thing always was like Lord of the Rings or not, like where do these orcs come from? Because to me, orcs are just like another race of giants, and goblins are like they look just like them but very small and skinny. So what's going on there? Seriously, what's going on there?
Well, as we know, like with giants, they are all offspring of the gods.
They're like elf-looking things, though. The orcs are different. They have the pointy ears.
They are, and elementals are also offspring of the gods. So why wouldn't we look for something similar for the orcs?
Yes,
just a different type of creation. You have creations, that are out there like apes, for example, right? So Bigfoot, maybe that's a spurious offspring. And we get in Pistis Sophia, we actually get a god with an ape's head. And I don't remember the name as it's in the Pistis Sophia, but I do know in some of my research in the Gnostics have another name for this god, and maybe there's more than one god with the ape that produced, but his name is Adonin. And part of the 7 offspring of Ialdabaoth, that's Sabaoth, is also part of those 7 offsprings, has an ape's head. So if it produced, it would produce something like them, maybe not as giant like for whatever other DNA or restrictions they wanted to put in there, but know that the orcs have a god that we can actually take through the Latin pantheon back to, and his name is Orcus, and he's god of the underworld and god of trades.
These names,
Orcus,
so,
and god of trolls. I'm sorry, and typically, these beings of trolls are associated with portals like under a bridge, like a crossing, as in a
Yeah,
bar.
yeah,
In the Hebrew, a bar, and as the travelers and passengers in Ezekiel 39. So to cross over, like into Nibiru, as a crossing over from Nibiru Ki, which is the real Sumerian word for earth, not Nibiru. That's part of the earth, but through that interdimensional sort of crossing. So yeah, we have also a possibility that there might be a connection between the god Orcus and Orcs and something called Cyclops. Now they're typically more one-eyed ones, but what's interesting is that you have gods in the Greek pantheon that produce Cyclops as a godlike creature, and then those three, they produce offspring, and one of them name is Polyphemus, which is also understood as part of the orc sort of imagery that went into Tolkien's positioning of the orcs. So I would be suggesting that they are a lower form, and or they could also be more of an ape form, right? Or they could be more of a cyclops. But again there could be different variations of other types of creations that are part of the visible hierarchy. But understand, they would completely sort of understand these as a giant goblin, because goblins can be giants and smaller ones, right?
really.
So it could be part of the goblins too. And that's how you get the connection in sort of to Polyphemus. And these were man-eating giants.
Of course. These man-eating giants that you say, these are the orcs, right? So
Yeah.
really quick, I wanted to also, like, with these orc things, and you come from this orc god, these things are different from ogres, right? This is not the same creature, right? Or is this simply
I think ogres is a variation of the orc. I really
yeah,
do.
because
Yeah,
they have
it's
like a
kind of
similar
similar.
look,
Yeah.
but not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the way I
So
see,
in the Tuatha De Danann history through the Labor Gabala, you have a giant group before the Tuathans get there called the Formorians, and the Formorians are going to displace the Fur-Bolg, which are one-eyed hairy giants, which
that
are
could be
more
the Cyclops,
Cyclops-like.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
Cyclops looking
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Probably just another race. So like, just like Gary, so the world, but like I've been studying this stuff, about a quarter time you've been doing it, but I've learned enough to know that just like there's different human races, hybrids, Asians, whites, blacks, Mexicans, and mixers, there's also mixers like that too of these giants, like from what I've
yep,
been seeing, because you
yeah,
have cyclopses that are hairy, not hairy, some are tall,
yep,
some are small,
yep,
but they all have the same attributes, which is a cyclops, right? So that
yes,
you mean you're a cyclops, but you're just a variation. You're a black cyclops, you're a white cyclops, you know what I mean? So with that being said, there's another thing too in Lord of the Rings that I've been that's been popping up in my head right now. So when I first saw Lord of the Rings, I would have connected this into a modern time the last 5-6 years. Is that in the movie, I believe it was the third one or the second one, you have these giant trees that talk and walk around, right? And I always thought that as someone just made that up, right? But then the last recent 2-3 years, I've been looking up a lot of Mexico type of apparitions, giants. There's a lot of giants in Mexico, and one of these stories tripped me out.
yeah,
And it's really known in mid Mexico by the pyramids that everybody knows this as regular folklore. Like they even see them once a week. There's a bunch of giants that they say that are in these mountains, and they disguise themselves as trees, and you can see them shapeshift, walk, get closer, and turn into a tree.
yeah.
Walk, get closer to. So you ever heard of that, Gary? In Mexico, these giant tree
Yeah, it's wild.
shapeshifting giants.
Well, we get it in polytheist history. We get these
Thank you.
and tales. We have these. Even in the Lord of the Rings, you show in
Yeah.
one of the movies these trees that talk and walk and are sentient beings.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, I don't know whether it's true or not, but again, if you could get to that level of corrupting everything on
On
the
Earth.
earth, all flesh, and so that means plant and animal and humans, and you can create chimera in animals, why can't you why wouldn't you have the ability and the technologies to create chimera with plants and animals, and plants and animals and humans, or whatever other combinations you want to use?
Yes.
And with insects.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna email you that video of a guy who's really well known. So this guy, the podcast, he's not even known to like go look for this stuff. Like the stuff we're talking about, he's like, this is not what he does. What he does, he takes donations to go help kids who are being molested and, sex trafficked, all these different countries. And he just happened to just witness these things. And when it happened, he was at a monastery, I guess, in Mexico, in the Mexico mountains. And when he saw it, he was basically saying, like, he told everybody there, he didn't tell him, hey, there's a giant tree over there turning into a monster. He just said, look over there and tell me what you see. So he didn't like predetermine anything. He just said, just look over there and tell me what you see. And everybody was like, what the heck am I looking at? And I guess when he started praying, the thing started getting mad. It started getting closer, shape shifting to a tree. And the reason why he noticed it was a big tree, and he saw a tree here. He turned around, it was this close, that close. Then he saw it turn to a thing, you know what I mean? So, I mean, this stuff is absolutely wild because, I'm about to be 40 in a few years here. I know, oh, you're still young, but I don't feel young. I feel old with all the things that I know. And it's just getting more and more realistic to me because I'm the Lord of the Rings. I saw that, Gary, when I was like 12, 11 years old. And now it was a bunch of BS to me. But now that I'm older and I'm reading all this stuff, I mean, every single creature, every name, every attribute, every look they have, everything from the orc to the elf to the tree creature, there's something in history that relates to it. As a matter of fact, the real history is more realistic than the movie.
It is. It's scarier. I mean, because because the entertainment revelations haven't caught up yet to what exists and what did exist.
Yes.
So it has to be more scarier. Yeah.
That's right, man. That's right. Gary, you kind of mentioned the future. Maybe we will see these rings come to in play. Maybe it'll be like a teraphim. Maybe it'll be rings that are endowed with a legion of demons as we move forward. And we know today that occultists, they still venerate this Solomonic type of incantations. They love it. The role in grimoires. The Testament of Solomon. They still study it and use it today. Whatever's written in this book, I haven't read it. If it has incantations, I don't know. But in modern usage right now, it's still used to bind spirits and other things. So there's a lot of history with the signet of Solomon and how it powers today's occultist. And we may see something in the future as in the form of a teraphim ring. I don't know. What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I think somehow we're going to see teraphim for sure. And for people who aren't familiar with that term, that means a talking idol. And that's actually a biblical
mark of the beast
word. Yes, and certainly the mark of the beast would be a very advanced sort of teraphim. And these are in the time from Abraham all the way through to David. That this technology was still there, that these idols could talk to you and have powers and were really quite prized and valued and advanced. And teraphim, source word is Rapha for, also produces giant and demon spirits. So yes, so it's obviously some sort of connection to that as a dwelling place for these ghost spirits, right? These disembodied spirits. So, I mean, rings of power, there's more to it than just the ring. There's more to it than just the crown. Whatever these rings of power are, I mean, you have these rings that are used, or these circles that are used within the magic of black magic. And those can also seemingly at times, take you into another dimension through a portal. So we don't know what those rings of power are going to represent, but It could be a significant part of them somehow transmitting whatever power is from the invisible ones. But it also seems like, how does that intermix with artificial intelligence or demonic technology? So these rings of power could also be, the power base or the technology of the militaries that are running the militaries at the end. So again, I'm not sure how that all sort of comes together with that kind of imagery, but we have to understand that rings of power is understood more than just a ring. And typically we get like 5 rings shown together, like with kind of like the Olympics model, and one wonders whether or not there's 2 groups of 5 rings.
Can I hear you? Would you say, Dominic? Go ahead.
No, the 7 vessels I mentioned earlier, the Electrum, they believe it was associated with these demons of planetary or the astral plane. You're talking about demons and different dimensions, and
Yep.
there's so much revolving around this signet of Solomon. It just branches out into the esoteric and the polytheist and going different directions, and King Hezekiah and all those stuff, and the alchemist of Egypt. And there's so much to this, Tolkien, and there was a series, I think it was called The Rings of Power, right? There was a show, I think it was on HBO Max, and
Yeah.
it kind of talked about the rings, rings of power, and
Mm.
and how they had one ring, and this guy wanted to make, I think it was seven new rings, 7 new vessels.
Yeah. And not
So
only that,
it all ties into this.
not only that, have you ever seen you ever seen like all the, non-biblical sources of the measurements and even the drawings of what Solomon's temple was? It was, I mean, if it was anywhere near what it says, it was massive. I mean, you look this big next to the top of the building. You see that, Gary? It's crazy. It's a huge.
Well, I would imagine it would have been spectacular.
It's massive.
Yeah.
So you can see it from across the valley.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? I mean, we're talking about, I was looking up, we got giant gold cherubims being giant stairways, huge bronze gates, elevated terraces, massive retaining walls. I'm looking at all these things right now. It's just, it's huge. Royal palaces inside, judgment halls, courtyards, armories, giant wells, ceremonial complexes. I mean, this place was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, how close are we to, Solomon having angels or giants help him build this? I mean, is that realistic?
Well, I mean, what he does do, Solomon, is he gets through, because of the treaties set up by David, and he renews those treaties. He goes to the king of Tyre to have his builders come over and teach Israel how to build these
That technology,
palaces and temples. And the knowledge they have is what is understood as the Dionysian builder knowledge. That is the building knowledge of before the flood. And
that's
they
some
use
Mason type of stuff.
Yeah. This and the Dionysian builder knowledge, would also come down through the Pythagorean mystery schools, and then to the Roman collegia to build, the Roman things as well, right?
We're talking some high levels.
Yes, we're talking significant levels of technology, and that this knowledge is knowledge that was antediluvian and across the flood. And so when the Templars excavate below Jerusalem, they're thought to have discovered some of this building knowledge that they took back to Europe, that they started the new Gothic style with flying buttresses and the great Gothic cathedrals that they built that took 100 years to build. And it's also thought that that is not fully replicating because of some lost knowledge or understanding, or didn't have perhaps demons helping them, that they couldn't build it even more spectacular. But this Dionysian knowledge built all the great palaces and all the great temples in all the nations in the early post-Diluvian world.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dominic.
No, the signet of Solomon, it's depicted as a, I don't know, like pentagram. It's also it's styled after the flag of Morocco, and no, let me see that. Probably not. Well, anyways,
Yeah.
if you can look up the flag of Morocco, it's and also this star is also associated with the Star of David.
Yes.
Now,
So
is that Star of David
yeah.
biblical?
Well, no, that's occult symbol that comes into the Zionist movement through, I think,
Yep.
mostly through the Rothschilds and other people like that in the late
Yep.
1800s. So it's not really the Star of David, but it gets adopted as the full symbol. So they call it the pentalpha. And so it's basically, a pentacle or a pentagram. It's the 5-star of the occult, that you put in the circle, the pentagram. And so that's what is thought to be in the occult circles, which was part of the engravings of the signet. So I think I don't believe that was what came down through Solomon, but I know that's what it was changed to, over time within polytheism. And again, the thing is that those imageries that we get on that are designed to honor the pantheon of the gods. That's imagery. So, and God doesn't want imagery in the worship or idols in the worship. So I'm not sure what the signet part would be if part of the Israelite or the Solomon rings were, but I would suggest they would not be honoring the pantheon of the gods in any sort of way.
Yeah.
But it's perfect how they've set that up. If you're going to introduce the ring and the signet with the engravings, that they've got their imagery on what people would expect to be in it.
Okay. That's interesting. Very interesting with all this. Yeah, man, that's wild. Gary, you told me so much. And another thing I want to get into really quick, this may be off topic, but I don't think it is because we're talking about Solomon here. Because in my circle that I have a lot of arguing between everything that I said from, Saints Little Season to, are we going to have, what's it called? They take you up into the heaven. What's that event called where they take you up before the 7-year tribulation?
Rapture?
Yeah, I argue with these people. And then I have a whole another argument with people that say that that this Solomon's Temple type of thing is something that's related to the mud flood era because the building was so big and all that. I mean, how easy is that to just disprove, or is it true at any point? I mean, could that, because they say that, oh, this is a mud flood building, because it has the same, architectural style in the drawings as the Victorian buildings. And basically they're trying to say that this building is not as old as they say it is. How easy is that to just...
Which building are they referring to?
The Solomon's Temple. They're saying that it's a mud flood building.
Yeah, well, we don't have Solomon's Temple. It was destroyed.
Well, there you go through my point. But
Yeah.
there's people that just ignore that. They ignore
Even
that all the time.
Yeah,
They
even
ignore it
the
all the time.
second temple has been destroyed.
Yeah,
so people are saying the temple is survival because of the mud flood. It's like, well, which temple are you talking about? We don't have a temple that survived.
And this is an answer I would have given, but because you are who you are, they take your answer better than mine. So now that you said it, there's your answer, ladies and gentlemen. There you go, right there.
Now maybe they're referring to the Islamic mosque, but that's not that spectacular of architecture.
No, you're right. And speaking of that,
it's nice, but it's not in the same sort of category. So
yeah, speaking of that, Gary, this is a little off topic, but also on topic because we did do an episode about the Catholic Church and we did do an episode about the last Pope that just passed away. Yep. What is your opinion right now? Because I think this all ties into everything, Solomon's Temple, the Bible, everything that's going on, because it all comes around in one circle, right? So what do you think about how Pope Leo, I think it was about less than 2 weeks ago, he went to Africa to visit the 3rd largest mosque in the world, right? Yep. He went to an area where Christians are being beheaded, being burned alive, being beaten to death, their kids being raped, and the males being enslaved. Some of the males being raped too. Anyways, Pope Leo went to one of these cities where this is all happening, and he told the Christians there, do not fear the Muslims. They are your friends. We all worship the same God. And you can look that up. Just, I don't know how you are. Oh, I didn't read that. I'm telling you, look it up. It's a big deal. Whether you read that or not, let's just pretend what I just said, you saw it already. What do you think about that? I mean, we already had 2 episodes about the Catholic Church, and I told you they have something to do with the end time and bringing, in my opinion at least, with the new one world religion. And I remember asking you on the last episode about the Catholic Church, like, how will they ever be able to bring us all together? But now that I'm looking around, I see so much, especially on social, because social media, you can see how the hive mind is working kind of in a way. And I'm seeing 90% of Christians now and Muslims saying, oh, we all need to be on one team because our common enemy is the Jews. Like, that's happening right now, especially with the younger generation. We're Christians, we're on the same team. We need to go get the Jews.
Well, yeah, it's all about how polytheism has entered into monotheism. Leave the Jewish people to to God, and God has a special path for them in their reconciliation, and they're suffering the curses of the consequences of violating the Holy Covenant. But we should not think that they've been replaced, which is common in Christian ideology and certainly in Islamic ideology, that they cannot be redeemed. Well, we should not be enemies of the Jewish people. No. I mean, we have to accept that they don't accept Jesus, but Islam doesn't accept Jesus as the Son of God either. They accept him but if they read the Quran, they might.
What's the difference? Yeah, I mean, I find Muslims and Jews have more in common than they think they do, because they both don't like us. They both don't believe Jesus is God. They both believe. Jews think that Jesus was just some kind of what's it called when someone's out there just running their mouth, some kind of activist, and then the Muslims believe he was just a prophet, and someone did a trick and replaced him on the cross, and Jesus ran away, and someone else got killed. I mean, they're both demonic.
And the biggest thing is, look for this attempt to put monotheism back together, so to speak, of all 3 aspects of monotheism, as we understand that as a generic term, that they all say they all worship the same God. I'll leave it to everybody else whether or not you want to believe that or not. I'm just saying what they say and what Christians say, right? Okay, so the way you bring that together is you have to eliminate Jesus from deity status and down to prophet status. And then Judaism and Islam would have no problem with that.
Of course.
Right? So that's how you have to do that. So that's a tough move for Christianity.
It's working.
But they're going to need evidence and things. But they've done they've prepared the soil with the seeds, and so look for 2 types of movements within each to take control. So let's look at the underground polytheists in each of the 3 religions. You have Sufis in Islam. You have Gnostics that have molded into Christianity with the interpretive approach, and you have Kabbalism and Ascenism and all the other mystical aspects of Talmudic Judaism, and that's going to play an influence because they're already there, living amongst each of those 3 sects. Now, you also, in each of the groups, you have conservatives and liberals.
Okay.
And of course, the liberals are essentially the polytheists.
Yes.
Right? And there are people, right? And it's the conservatives who are hardcore literalists, not interpretive. So look for that split as well. But what happens, though, is there has to be a de-deification of Jesus, and the Christian church actually renouncing Jesus as Redeemer status.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I've been reading the Quran a lot more, and I saw that there. Basically, Gary, I mean, all you gotta do is just Google similarities between their savior, the Mahdi or Mahdi, however you say it, to their description of the savior that's coming in is an exact description, Gary, of the Antichrist. Everything from him coming on a white horse. There's going to be 7 years of peace. Half of it's going to be peace, other half tribulation. It's In the Quran, it says this. Not
Well, not in the Quran, in the Hadith.
Oh, I'm telling you, I just looked up the other day. I'm gonna look it up right now, but
Yeah.
we'll go back to that. But it says that he is going to be a white rider on a horse.
Yeah. Yep.
7 years of drama. He's gonna be a
Yep.
world peace leader. And even I'm like 50% sure it's in the Quran, but if it's not, it doesn't change the fact that in the Quran they still don't believe Jesus is God. They don't believe he's nothing but just a guy who just was close to Allah. You know, he was just Allah's favorite guy, but not his son.
Well, but again, it all depends. I don't want to litigate their beliefs or not. Their beliefs and what the Quran says are two different things. And so the first thing is it says that everything written in the Bible is true.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you have to interpret the Quran by the Bible, not by the Hadith. That's a whole different way of understanding the Quran. And it does say Jesus is the Word of God, right? It does say that he was resurrected back to heaven 3 times.
Okay.
So he says he is the Messiah. So but I know most Muslims don't believe that. So and they're going to be held accountable for what they were given if it's scripture. If it's not, they still were told that he's the Messiah. And they rejected that. So I would be careful with that. It's the Hadiths that talk about the Mahdis, the Mahdis.
Yeah.
And there's 2 Mahdis, depending whether it's Sunni and Shia. And they're going to have a war between each other. But you're right. They are described as in that Antichrist type aspect.
Yeah. Go ahead, Don. I'm just reading this really quick. I'm reading this Quran verse really quick. Hold on, I want to see it.
The Hadith, when was this written and by whom?
Well, it was not really written.
Okay.
It's so you have at least two traditions, and you actually have more, but let's just deal with the Shia and the Sunnis, which are different hadiths.
Yeah.
And they are oral accountings of what somebody said Muhammad said.
Oh, okay.
And at some point in time, somewhere around 800 or so, 900, then they were started to be put down in writings. But again, because it was oral traditions and you had a split there, they have completely different hadiths, but they both include a Mahdi.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to get a gauge on. They're always warring over there, man. The Sunni, the Shia, the Sufi. I don't really hear too much about them.
Yeah.
Over in the Middle East, there's a lot of, it's just, I don't think that'll ever change. And they have different beliefs, and but definitely they have one common thing is who's coming back. But it's interesting how a lot of this hadith, it intertwines at times with the Quran, and it gets confusing.
It does.
Like you're saying, the Quran doesn't say that, but the hadith say that. But this is oral tradition, like the oral traditions of the Native Americans. I mean, is there
like the Catholics,
any truth to it, or any truth to that? I mean, oral traditions.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Targum when you start adding Lilith into it. It's like, okay, that's a step too far. So, we're going to see something that comes up within Islam that's going to change things. We're just not quite sure what that is, but they're going to have to be diminished significantly in power to be rolled in, because they would want a priority position in it. But then the Christian church does too, but then the Judaic church would too. So it's going to take false prophets, and it's going to take catastrophes to bring this about.
That seems so far off to me right now. I mean,
it is
magical rings, and hybrid entities walking on the earth with us. I mean, that seems so. When I stop and think about it, it seems so far fetched. I mean, how can this happen? How can we see, a war in heaven and these entities walking among us now? And it's just when sometimes I'm like, is that going to be a reality, or is just like, because when I'm sitting in my car, I think about all these things. Like, come on, man. Sometimes like giants, and demonics and interdimensional aliens, and it's kind of out there, for me.
It is. We can start to see how we might get there over time. What is unclear is how fast that can happen. There's a lot of technology that has to be unleashed. a lot of beings to show up, and a lot of things to change religiously. Now that can happen through, faster through great catastrophes and wars and stuff, but it's, for people who keep, and I take a lot of heat over this, saying, well, you're always pushing off how far away we are. I do think we're in that generation. I think we're in the fig tree generation, but to say that we're, anywhere close to the start of the last 7 years, there is way too much to change.
Yeah. I just went through these verses right here. You're right. It doesn't say specifically, but I have like I have the Surah Al-Kahf, and I have about 4 of the verses that the closest thing we can get to that is they are very 100% on point that Jesus is just a Messiah, a messenger, but definitely not the Son of God, and is no longer than a human who is going to be special, brought back by Allah to judge the world. But it's funny how they say he's going to judge the world, right? But
yeah. so yeah, and you also have to, it's like reading the Bible, you have to put all the passages together. So and then you get the picture as to who they're, what they're actually talking about in terms of Jesus. But people like to do with the Bible. You go in and pick one passage out, and it doesn't show what all the other passages have to say.
No.
And so we should be careful of doing that in the Bible, and we should be careful about doing that in the Quran as well.
Yeah, you're right. But either way, no matter, the further we get into the world, I mean, these hadiths are 100% a part of their teachings now. Yes, there's Muslims who are in a small little group who don't believe in that, but those people cannot change the world. They're just they're like me and my dad. We're just a little family that believe in one little thing. But the majority of it, I mean, they believe this Mahdi. I mean, they already had that one guy that came out a year ago, Dominic. Remember that Mahdi got the beanie on? He's going around speaking to. We already have one.
What happened to him?
Yeah, I wonder what happened to him. He's dead already or what? But these people believe this stuff, whether we believe it or not. I mean, they have some very different, interesting teachings, and it's just getting a lot more complicated. And I would even go further to say is that because with the Catholic Church, I have a big issue with the Catholic Church because I feel like they're the ones that promotes it under the radar, because in their own what's that word, their catechism, I forgot what verse is. I could Google it right now, but it says that me and them, it says the Muslims and us, we all worship the same God. We're all one brothers under our law. So that was already being presented as a plan, and then they wrote that hundreds of years ago, and then now we have Pope Leo during out of all times, out of all the centuries in the world, he's choosing this time when we're at war with every religion to say, the Muslims are our friends, especially in Africa where most of the Christians are being treated the worst right now.
Yeah.
And then we have the aliens.
And again, you have to understand the Catholics have their own biases as well. So they believe that they are the true church, and that's the church of the millennium. Right?
Lord, man, those people drive me. They're just as bad as the St. Little Season people. They attack me a lot just because I don't believe in I don't think that I need to, say sorry, hey, forgive me for my sins to some guy in a little window. Like, I just don't believe in that. I'm sorry, but like, why can't we be friends? Hey, you believe that, I don't. Can we hang out? I guess we can't, because they just want to argue all the time. Well, you don't pray to, when I say, like, why do you pray to Mary when you can just pray to Jesus? Oh, you never asked your mom or dad to pray for you when you're sick? I said, yes, but they're here on earth. I'm looking at them. It's different when they're dead. It's a whole different story. Oh, no, it's not. No, because Mary and the saints are different. They're special. They're alive right now. So you don't believe in the Bible? When you die, you have eternal life? I was like, but it's not Judgment Day yet.
No.
I always have an answer for them. There's an answer for me too.
There is a significant about man-made doctrine put into so many of the Christian religions, including the Roman Catholic Church, and we don't have scripture for Mary being resurrected. We don't have scripture to call her Mother of God. We do not. They choose to add on to that, but there's so much in Christianity within most churches, they add on to things all the time. It's just a bad matter of what levels of addition that they're putting on there. So it's unfortunate, and I don't condone that, but what we should not be doing is dividing the church. We have a belief in Jesus, we have a belief in God and the Holy Spirit, and that, there is going to be resurrections, there's going to be a rapture, there's going to be a millennium, and
It's hard.
those are the things we should be looking to unite on, and not trying to wedge separations on Christianity, and trying to get people to say, look at what's in the Bible and base doctrine on that, not on what somebody says.
It's really hard
unless they have scripture.
Like, especially like me, like someone like me, who's mostly well informed about what's going on. It's even hard for me to grasp all this. Imagine someone who's barely walking into this; they'd be so confused and be so lost. Like, what giants, demons, Catholics, Muslims, Protestants? Like, you know what I mean? It's so complicated, But yeah, and then you just see what's going on in the world. America's supposed to be a Christian nation. If you're looking at America from the outside, you're like, that has nothing to do with Christianity. It's just, there's just so many different things going on. And, it's really harder now for the people to, who are definitely not informed or who are becoming new to this. They're probably just so lost. Like, who do I believe?
We don't do ourselves favors as Christians to try and role model to invite people who are non-Christians into us.
Yes,
when we're squabbling so hard amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that sometimes too.
Well, there's a lot of
frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. There's a lot of squabbling amongst this space that we do, amongst others, in this space, and the majority of them are Christians.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate, but I think for us, moving forward, I mean, we live in a society that is built on victimization and tearing each other down, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is.
That's a reality we live in now. And me personally, I try to stay away from controversies, but sometimes people will attack me.
They make it impossible.
Yeah, they'll attack me if I post something about the president and saying something about UFO files. They started writing on the page things that have nothing to do with about the post. It's all political. Start dividing and fighting, but that's where we live now in this world.
Oh, UFOs is white people thoughts, right? Like, stupid stuff. Like, what are you talking about, dude?
Crazy, man.
Those are black. Black people have invented that, right? What? Okay.
It's crazy out there, man.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, who cares who invented it?
I don't care at all. Like, it's ridiculous. But anyways, Dominic, you have any last words? We're coming up on about 5 minutes here for the.
No. I mean, I'm good.
Any questions? Anything? Because there's a lot of stuff, man. There's so many things we can talk about. But the next one is crazy.
There's still a lot to talk about, but we covered up pretty much everything. The signet of Solomon. I think we touched on the 7 vessels. Buried supposedly under Jerusalem and some kind of abyss and whatever. And we tied in Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and all this stuff. And it's really interesting that
these creatures.
I mean, when you watch this Lord of the Rings and how they're able to see when they put the ring on, like the Gary says, they're invisible, but they could see the demonic realm. I mean, I gotta ask myself, where do they get these ideas from that they can see the demonic realm now?
Yeah. Well, this is all part of their history. It's all part of occult writings. What we see in the entertainment is what they believe and what their history tells them happened. So,
do you think there's any truth to that, though? That they actually could see into another realm? Like for example, those sunglasses or whatever they wore in Vietnam, and they could
What's that movie called?
They could see demons. There's some kind of blue. No kind of blue fluid in the lens, and they can actually see demonic entities in another realm.
Yeah, I mean, because they're just in a different sort of phase, right? It's just same place, same location, just different wavelength. And so, and it was common to cross over between the dimensions. But we see this in so much of the the imagery, like a mirror on the wall. That's a portal into another location. When you look into a crystal ball, that's a technology and a mirror into another wall or into another dimension. And so what we're learning is there's a combination between technology as a supplement for how you manipulate how this world works.
Yeah.
And God, Jesus literally said if we had enough faith, we could move mountains and do, impossible things. But we don't know how to channel that. But we're looking to get into the mechanics of the universe. So, yeah, I think this is, this was, understood in ancient history, and I think that we're going to get more and more familiar with that as we go forward. So. But yeah, I do think there, things are going to be interdimensional, not intergalactic. And it just sort of fits with our whole history.
Yeah.
And in the Bible, we get told about different dimensions. We get told about Jesus going into Hades and Sheol, and talking to the prisoners in the pit prison. We're told about there's beings in the sea and there's beings in the earth. And we know that there's a dwelling place of heaven. And so we don't want to dismiss what the Bible says, but we also don't want to be misled by what the polytheists say. And that's the fine line that you try and sort of thread on that. But if it's going to be like the days of Noah, then we should better understand what the polytheists believe that those days of Noah look like, because that's what they're trying to bring about again.
Yeah, it's funny because the U.S. Congresswoman Luna, she said she was briefed a little on the UFO files, and she says they're interdimensional, and she says read the Book of Enoch.
Oh, interesting. Who said
You
that?
can look at that article, Congresswoman Luna, United States.
Nice.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they say about that. And, the last thing I would finish up on the show on is the idea of rod and ring is something that was always used together. And again, understand there's a monotheist version of Jesus ruling with a rod of iron as well.
No.
Right? But in the polytheist version, the rod of rule and the ring of rule went side by side. And that rod would generally also have some sort of magical or technologically advanced aspects to it.
Wow, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good one right there. Wow, man. There's so many little nuggets there. I don't know how you got all these details, Gary. You've been doing this for so long. All these little details, just the word breakdown. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys heard all this, the breakdown of just the names of the Lord of the Rings was something that that threw me back a little bit. I don't even know how you even, you must have sat there and really read those words, because it's really, I didn't even know how you did that. You combine 3 different names in one word. It's pretty interesting. Solomon, what's the one, the dinosaur guy, what's his name? Sauron. Sauron. Yeah, that's wild, man. And it all relates. Yeah, dragon, it's like a multi-meaning, which is what the elite and what the Satanists do. They do a multi, they do symbolism meanings, they do all this. What's the other word I want to look for again? Karmic retribution. Basically, they have to tell you what they're going to do in the future. If they don't, they get punished. And whether they do that through movies or through commercials or football events, whatever, that's what they're here to do. And it's getting more and more obvious. And I would say to the audience, every movie you watch, every TV show, everything, look for a checkered floor. Every single movie and TV show, whether for a split second, there's a checkered floor. You notice that, good? There's always a checkered floor in everyone. I'm saying everything, even Fresh Prince, Growing Pains. There's always one episode with a checkered floor imagery somewhere, even the good ones. So, yeah, very, very good show tonight. Thank you again, Gary, for coming on. You've been a blessing. I cannot wait to keep going. We have about 3 different topics me and Dominic are thinking about right now. We're gonna let you know about in a couple of days, but this was a good one right here. I mean, this might even need a part 2 in the future, because there's so many things I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to relate this to all the other lore in Lord of the Rings. They have sea monsters too, like Leviathan and Lord of the Rings and the bigger books. And you have the Hobbit too in that war before Lord of the Rings, when you had more different races and they fought on that big mountain. That could be an allegory for something else. And then in the older Lord of the Rings, they have dragons that were alive. I mean, so on and on it goes. That's another thing I wanted to ask you too in the future. I mean, were dragons just these mindless beasts, or do they have some kind of a consciousness of similar to a human, in an animal body? Because that's what I've been looking up. But that's another topic for another time, Gary. But I would love to discuss all that stuff and just get to pick your brain more, because everybody's been loving these topics. But really quick, Gary, I know you said in the beginning, but let the people know about your latest book and just tell them where to get it. Give them the website, Amazon, where to get it. Let's do this.
Yeah, so the latest book is the Oprimo Conspiracy, AI's Covenant with Babylon. And so within the characters and the novel, we have a lot of prehistory. Some of the things that we might have been talking about today will be kind of part of that in that sort of style. And it also is a book that tells us how AI is going to affect the universal religion in the end time and Antichrist. And it is a book that uses my eschatology, and in book one is getting us to the opening of the third seals and getting close to the start of the last 7 years.
Yes. Hey, Dominic, go ahead. I hear you.
No, thank you, Gary, for coming on. It's
I
really
can't wait
interesting
for that.
show, man. Another good show.
Moving.
Can't wait to read your book. I need to get on that. And thank you for coming on. I mean, I really appreciate it. Really do.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And before we get off here, don't hang up, Gary. Once I end the show here, I wanted to ask you about some topics here. But anyways, thank you, everybody, for listening again. This is what I call it, the Gary Wayne Transmission. Once a month, we are getting different topics that you can't really find anywhere else. All these topics are pretty much thought about me and Dominic. You know, I've been doing this I've been listening to these kind of things for over 20 years, but I've been researching it for the last, 15 years. And I've known Gary for a few years now, but I've been watching his stuff, and I've seen a lot of his topics, everything from the giants, the little creatures, and all this other little things. So this is why I'm picking his brain on different topics. A lot of people don't know that this man is intelligent on almost everything. I even did an episode a while ago about superheroes, and I'm pretty sure you guys saw that one. But it's just one of many things. That's why we're talking about this. And the next topic we have is going to be great. So thank everybody for listening. Thank everybody for giving me your opinions on what you want me to talk about and all these other different things. So thank you once again. This is your host, Lionel Tavares from Sabbath at Midnight. Once again, Gary Wayne, thank you for the Gary Wayne Transmission. Thank you for being very respectful and being humble and being on the show. Dominic, thank you for being my co-host. And before I hang up here, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow us on all the social media platforms. And don't forget to go on Amazon, look up Genesis Conspiracy Part 1 and 2 by Gary Wayne. It's all right there. You can find it easily, Gen 6 Conspiracy 1 and 2, and his new book. Other than that, God bless you, and Jesus is King, and have a good night. Let me see. Let me end all this right quick.
Finally, I feel alive, and I know why. Cause I'm giving all the glory to the Most High. They don't wanna hear the truth, that is no lie. If we ain't in the last days, then we're close by. The devil's trying to snatch your soul, and it's not a game. You hear me saying Jesus Christ, and it's not in vain. They might get offended every time I drop his name, but I'ma let them know that I'm not ashamed. That's right, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. Even if I know it'll be making them hostile. Thinking about the persecution of apostles. They wanna see his people in the dirt with the fossils. You may be thinking that might sound extreme, but you gotta ask yourself, is this life what it seems? People suffering for Christ in this world full of schemes and agendas. Would you give your life for the king? Give it up. Martyrdom, yeah, that really is a thing. Better look it up if you don't believe, you know what I mean? We gotta try our hardest not to be so naive and be mindful of the children and people that bleed for the name of Christ. The only one that can save your life. He saved mine never once, gotta thank him twice. The amount of 1,000 thanks in a day, knowing I gotta give him more praise when I pray. Finally I feel alive, and I know why. Cause I'm giving all the glory to the Most High. They don't wanna hear the truth, that is no lie. If we ain't in the last days, then we're close by. The devil's trying to snatch your soul, and it's not a game. You hear me saying Jesus Christ, and it's not in vain. They might get offended every time I drop his name, but I'ma let them know that I'm not ashamed. Can't be content with just church on Sunday, or just going through the motions, cause one day I'ma have to give account for my time spent, and where my empty words and all of that pride went. Calamity bringing clarity. Seems like a good church these days is a rarity. 1 out of 7 in the book of Revelation. A perverse generation on the verge of devastation. A sign of the times, realizing that I'm in danger if I don't put my mind to the grind and do a work for the Lord. Every verse is a sword. Overseas there is people getting murked for the Lord. Imagining the whole church in the court, death to self shortly after rebirth in the Lord. Rapping for Christ like I wanna be his hype man, and I know opportunities have a lifespan. Finally I feel alive, and I know why. Cause I'm giving all the glory to the Most High. They don't wanna hear the truth, that is no lie. If we ain't in the last days, then we're close by. The devil's trying to snatch your soul, and it's not a game. You hear me saying Jesus Christ, and it's not in vain. They might get offended every time I drop his name, but I'ma let them know that I'm not ashamed.
The idea is trusting in God even when it doesn't make sense. From 2 Timothy 1 verse 12, this is why I am suffering as I am. Yet I am not ashamed, because I know whom I have believed. I am convinced that he is able to guard what I have entrusted to him for that day. I am not ashamed, he says.